It's just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Blake and Chase Thompson, denturists who flew all the way down here from Canada. Gosh darn, right before it gets real hot. You came at like the last time you can visit Phoenix before you go into the 110 deal. They're second-generation denturists from Canada, operating in Saskatchewan, Alberta. With their dad, the Thompson brothers manage 5 practices with 2 more on the way. Their mission is to deliver an outstanding experience for both patients and employees. As dedicated denturists, they handle all clinical work and much of the lab work themselves. They are at the forefront of dental technology, heavily involved in 3D printing, and are transitioning from traditional analog dentures to fully digital, complete dentures using a state-of-the-art 5-axis mill. And we were talking before the show is that, so many of my dental friends, they do fillings every day. Mm-hmm. They do a crown every day. They probably do a couple endos a week. But they probably only do like a denture once a month or every other month. So I feel like they never did enough. Like the best denture dentists I know out here, they worked in a denture clinic, for like a year before they started. That was their associate job. And oh my God, they mastered it. I mean, if you were making 5 dentures a day, how long would it take you to be really good at it like a dentist is good at a filling or a crown?
You're so right. You're so right. Not long at all. Right? It's all about volume. And if you're doing 4 dentures a year or 4 sets of dentures a year, by the time you get around to the next one, you're not even remembering what made something go well or not in the past. You definitely just need experience with dentures, and everybody's mouth is different. Everybody's tissue is different. Everybody's situation is different. And when you come into a denture practice, you got to be prepared to kind of ebb and flow and know the techniques that are going to work for different patients. And so experience is huge.
So, we have, half of our listeners are international. We've had over 10 million podcasts. A lot of my international viewers, and I think some in America might not even know what a denturist is. And is it legal in all 50 states? Is it in all 9 provinces in Canada and territories? Or tell us what a denturist is.
A denturist in general is a dental technician who can also do clinical procedures, but only is limited the scope of dentures, removable partial dentures, complete dentures, over dentures, dentures on implants, everything around dentures. They are legal in every province, and they right now can operate in Colorado, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, and Arizona. And I think there's one more on the way.
Washington,
I think Washington's the 6th. But in general, as well as New Zealand, Australia, and the UK and Ireland. But right now we are limited to those areas because it's not necessarily the most prominent and popular profession for people to get into. It's a little bit more on the niche side of things, and we do focus only on dentures, and it's not a lot of kids that grow up and say, I'd love to be a denturist, even though it's a career that my brother and I have both come to absolutely love and adore every day, and seeing the challenges of it and the hands-on aspect of it. Whereas, and as a denturist, what we are, when involving we see patients, we take impressions, but then once we have them, we don't usually send it off to a lab. For the most part, we either have a lab in the back where we are going to the back ourselves, setting the teeth ourselves, processing it ourselves, trying ourselves, everything. Almost never will you have a dental assistant. Now it's becoming more popular to have a lab technician. Our dad still definitely is not in that realm yet. Every tooth laid by hand, it has to be perfect. Every canine, everything has to be his way, which makes every denture look beautiful. So for the most part, that's roughly what a denturist is. Chase, you think there's anything else to that?
Yeah, I think just there's a different level of control over the treatment when you're doing the lab work yourself and going to the back, setting those teeth, processing it yourself, and all the time that goes into that. Like in a typical denture practice, I would say it's maybe 50-50, but probably more like 2-to-1 of lab time spent to clinical time spent. Mm-hmm. And it's not unusual to have a denturist that sees patients all day and then works till 10 or midnight. That is a denturist credo, is working till late at night in the lab, making your dentures, go home, eat some dinner, back down.
Keeping our margins high, low staff, keeping better margins that way as well. Doing things yourself, you're always busy, 24/7 at capacity, but you trade off a lot of other things. So,
well, the only DSO that I can think of, DSOs are major these days, that's denture focused, is Aspen.
Right, they're super denture focused.
And I lost my uncle over that, and which is fine because, you know, it was all free.
Mhm.
And he said, no, no, no. If I go to Aspen, it's right by my house. I have to drive an hour to go see you, but it's right by my house. But they have the lab right there, and you make me come at 8 and then send it off to the lab, and then I come back and pick it up at the end of the day, and they do it right there where I'm sitting there. And he didn't even care that it cost some more money. He hated that day walking around with his teeth out all day. And, you know, that's how we would do it. But, you know, when I graduated middle school in 87, and those guys were thinking in 80, freshman year, 84 to 87, that dentures were going to go extinct, and there's water fluoridation and dental sealants, and that's old school. And there's actually more people have dentures today than in 1987 because you got immigrants, you got poor, but basically by 65, 1 in 10 Americans have 0 teeth, and by 75, 2 in 10 don't. So 1/5 is going to lose all their teeth in the United States. So if you got 330 million people and 1/10 of them are going to be completely dentureless, this isn't going anywhere.
Absolutely.
So true.
Absolutely. And denturists heard the same thing in the 90s of, you know, water fluoridation, like you're saying, better oral health. People are quitting smoking. Dentures are going to be a thing of the past. No one's going to have a problem with tooth loss, but that's just not been the case. And there's tons and tons of reasons.
Well, in America, when everybody quit smoking, that means tobacco. They all switch to meth. And, you know, they're like, I'm going to get off this nicotine crap. It's bad for your health.
Yeah.
But, man, they get on meth. I mean, I've seen it. I remember my first meth patients. I was so dumb. I didn't even know what it was. I couldn't figure out why he had all these black lesions around his gum. So I fixed up his whole tooth, did everything. 6 months later, he came in, and they were mush.
Yep.
And I still didn't figure it out. This is like in 87.
Yeah.
And finally, I was talking to some other dentist. He goes, where does he live? And I said, Apache Junction. He goes, Apache Junction? I think there's meth out there. And then I had a classmate that went to, what was it, in California, where Johnny Carson was from. But anyway, he practiced there 5 years, and then all of a sudden they had a meth epidemic. And he just said he couldn't believe it. I mean, in like a 5-year period, he went from doing like a denture every other month to starting several a day. And it just shuts down your saliva. And I mean, it's just teeth go to mush and about that. But so it's popular in some state, or it's legal in like 5 states: Washington, Oregon, Colorado, Arizona.
Oregon. And right now there is a denturist that we know of in Oregon right now.
Yeah, I think Oregon.
He's very, very busy. It's very quickly, once dentists get on to, hey, you know what, I can refer them somewhere where, you know, they're not going to be taking my work, but they can do the denture work that I'm not a big fan of. It's time consuming. Refer them off to a denturist. The denturist handles the denture parts of things, refers them back to the dentist for their cleanings, their checkups, extractions, everything that dentist wants to keep focusing on doing. And immediately within a large area, people are just sending to him because of that exact reason. So it's a great gap filler for what dentists don't want to do, lets them get back to the work they care about, the work that they practice doing, the work they want to do, and away from the dentures. Not every practitioner, of course, but yeah, very in the states where they have them, it's catching on quickly. Yeah.
So are you still setting up teeth and doing the old way, or are you starting to go, what percent are you starting to go digital, from analog to digital?
I'll let Chase handle that because he's been guiding us from this transition. Yeah,
finishing work still is all analog for us. But leading up to that, 3D printing has been a total game changer. Having a new level of control over the model, having control over the setup, and being able to rapidly prototype that in-house and not have a massive commitment. I think the best example is a midline change for us. When you have a midline change, it's a full reset of that denture that you just beautifully cared for to make this perfect setup. Now there's a midline change and the whole thing's got to move over. Whereas if I do my try-in digital and I know that midline's got to change, I'm still only setting it up once. Or if we're going to finish it digital, just click open, get rid of the gingiva, teeth go over a little, boom, to the next step. And that is so fantastic to have it as a tool in the practice more than anything. That's where we use it right now. And now we just recently bought a mill, so we'll be switching all of our finishing work to milled, whether that's a milled pink base and, you know, the glued in carded teeth, or milled teeth, milled base, bring them together. Our finishing work for complete dentures is going to change. But there's not really a logical workflow yet for partial dentures for the lab. When you talk about getting either a finished partial back from the lab or just a framework, that's a lot easier to finish by hand than spending 20 hours milling metal pink teeth and then hoping it was all milled perfectly and designed perfectly to glue together at the end. As just, to me, it doesn't make sense quite yet. But for the complete dentures, it's beautiful, all of it. And however somebody wants to use it in their practice. If they're just going to use the 3D printing to make their bite blocks and their custom trays in-house, like you said, lots of denture patients come into a practice. They don't do any lab work in that practice at all. They have to send for a custom tray to the lab. It comes back a week later, or say 3 days later. Then they're back in. It can take 6 or 8 weeks for a normal dental practice to provide a denture. Whereas even if that dental practice introduced some digital just to get to the point of then sending it to be finished, huge advantage.
Yeah, and people don't realize the premium speed. Like braces, like people say, I can't believe braces are now $6,000. I said they could get $10,000 if they could finish you in 30 days. They could get $20,000 if they could finish you in 1 day. Mm-hmm. They always want speed. Is digital though? Is it more bleeding edge or is it leading edge? I mean, is it Star Wars coming around one day soon, or is it here?
Milled complete dentures, it's here. It's here, especially.
What brand are you talking about?
Especially now with like Vita, they've got this dent disc. It's a composite disc. It's got wear resistance comparable to that of high-end denture teeth, and you're finishing it in a mill. It's got perfect occlusion, customized to that patient's movements if you want, or customized to the opposing occlusion. It's fantastic. You know, it's there. But the 3D printed dentures, that's, I'd say, more on the bleeding edge side. That's feels to me to be on the race to the bottom side. They haven't worked out for us. They haven't worked out for a lot of practitioners that we talk to. I mean, maybe there's people having more success with them than we realize, but in large part, just it doesn't matter what the company is or the brand is. PMMA is PMMA. There's the better stuff. They're double cross-linked, highly cross-linked. At the end of the day, there's only realistically a 10 or 15% difference between normal PMMA and DCL, TCR, whatever people want to call it.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree.
Yeah.
And just put it bluntly, definitely be cautious of, when they say Lucitone digital print, it's not PMMA, it's not Lucitone, it's printed dentures, but they bought the name Lucitone.
It's like Cure resin.
Yeah. So to us, at least at Denturist, we're very prideful of our work. We take it very seriously. It has to be perfect or it's not good enough. There's no, that bite's close, the bite's on or it's off. And if it's off, it's wrong and it has to be redone. So
I like the way you put braces on your dentures. So people don't even think.
It was the smartest move I ever made. Really.
I know. It looks like, okay, they got to be natural because he's got braces.
Yeah, and the gums even. And I thought about the red. What do you think of the red? Is this the classic or is this?
I got to argue with you on the midline because several times over the last 33 decades plus or whatever, some dentist is going crazy about, his orthodontist and the midline's off 0.5 millimeter and blah, 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 blah. And I go, hey. Yeah. Okay. Don't look at your wife.
Yeah.
Okay. You have sex with her. Is her midline down the middle, to the left or the right? He never knows.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so you're making love to this woman for 20 years and you don't know where her midline is, but you're, and one time, because we have Orthotown magazine and website too. And I mean, so many times I've been lecturing to orthodontists, and if I see him sitting next to their wife, they haven't seen me lecture, I trick him. I go right up to him. I tell his wife, look that way. And then I ask the orthodontist, is your wife's midline to the left, midline or right? I swear to God, they never know. And sometimes they go, oh no, her midline's perfect. And I'm like, okay, and then they look at it and they go, oh, wow. Yeah. So sometimes I always think, okay, so you're pulling bicuspids to make room to get this midline, or you're taking an ortho treatment that could have been in 18 months, and you're making it like 30 months to get that midline perfect. But I got to tell you one other story. I keep hearing of all these partial lab. Whenever I'm talking to someone doing a partial, I say, by the way, who does, do you wax that frame by? Oh, no, everybody here sends to a lab in Nogales. Well, Nogales is right on the Mexican border.
Yeah.
So I drove down to Nogales with the lab address, and sure enough, they do all the mail there. Then they drive them across. So we went across into Mexico, and I went to this lab, and they're still down there. They do 1,200 cast partial frames a day. They just cast the partial frame. But I love going in the labs because I like to look at the tubs. 9 out of 10 partials is just an impression and it says partial. No,
God.
didn't carve one
Yes.
receipt.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you didn't even take a football bird, just pretend you're a dentist. Or, I mean, really, someone at the grocery store could have taken an alginate and sent it to Mexico. I mean, but it just really makes your mind. I see it over and over and over that there's a clear difference between the top 10% dentists and the other 90%. I think 90%, you know, it's stressful, it's tough. A lot of them say things, well, he never takes care of his teeth. He don't brush your floss. Why should I redo the filling because the contact's light when he came in with, you know, Mountain Dew in his hand? You know, and I understand it's all stressful now, but I really only think 10% of dentists are what, maybe they're anal. Like when you said, you know, it's got to be perfect.
Yep.
Maybe you're anal. But what percent of your partials do you actually make a receipt on a tooth or, you know, do something to it?
I'd say 80%.
Yeah,
80%.
We can't do
do that,
preparations
yeah.
ourselves, right? We can't alter dentition. We can't pull a tooth. We can't.
But does
carve
it
a tooth,
surprise you
but
that 90% of the partials just is an impression that says partial?
does
no
it surprise
design,
me? No.
no
Surprise me,
press?
no, not
That
at
doesn't
all.
surprise you at all?
No.
No, it doesn't
No.
surprise us. but,
That's the quick and,
I
easy
would
way
think,
to do it. It's
and
where
what
people
percent
are
of
going to
your
revert.
new patients are referral from a dentist versus your B2C marketing referrals? You know,
yeah, I'd say it
Gosh,
depends
I
on the
don't
clinic
know.
right
Yeah,
now.
I
But
would say
yeah, 50-50, I guess.
Yeah.
In most
50-50.
cases, yeah.
because I do know one thing about dentists.
Mm.
They don't like dentures and they don't like children.
Mm.
I mean, even when I had 4 kids, I had 4 boys in 60 months and I still hated pedo the most.
Yeah.
It's like, I love my baby boys, but my God, you know, the minute they start crying, my heart's racing. You know, I just always found myself, you know, just like, you know, just you felt like a wreck working on a kid. And I just said, you know, I hate this. So I imagine, so you split your marketing half with trying to get dentists to refer and half B2C marketing.
I would say
what
like
is your main
we're
marketing?
we're not spending on marketing to our referring dentists. I feel like, you know, our mentality is we want them to see the experience that our patients are getting and the quality of the work that they're getting, and be just thinking to themselves, this person's in my hands, they're in my care, and I need to refer them to a denturist. We want them to just think it's a no-brainer. They're going to them. They're going to them because I want them to get the best quality and the best experience they can, and I trust them to be kind of a proxy of my own care in caring for that patient. So our marketing spend is definitely all just going to be largely, at least, direct to consumer.
And on that, you were talking about milling versus printing. On that 5-axis mill, what brand?
Our mill we just got, it's a DePreg mill, and
DePreg?
Yeah, DePreg, yeah. And it's a Chinese mill actually, and we got it for a really sweet deal on a demo deal, and we're pumped about it.
So that's DEPREG?
PRAG, yeah.
DEPRAG, one word?
Yep.
DePrag.
Yep.
Huh.
Yeah.
Not very well known yet, but most denturists will be using a PM7 because there's other options out there. The PM7 has got a lot of advantages to it as well. I'm sure Ivoclar, we'd love it to demo one of those too, but
if they want to send one out, yeah, we're
not
more
quite
than
there
welcome
yet,
to try.
PM 7s by Ivoclar.
the PM7, as far as denturists go, they're going to be using a PM7.
Totally.
As if you're going to be wanting to donate all that resources, that's going to be the way to go. Right now, the DePreg for us is it's a good starter mill. Let us get into the industry on a bit of a lower cost. So
Totally.
So what about your pretty beautiful high-end teeth? What percent of your teeth are just like standard common teeth? What percent? Because I know Ivoclar's got, you know, there's price segmentation in their teeth. What are your thoughts on that?
Right now,
we're typically using a mid-grade kind of middle of the ground tooth. I really like Coulter Delara teeth lately.
Coulter?
Yeah, Coulter teeth. And they've got a higher end.
What was
tooth
the brand on the
Mondial.
Coulter?
Coulter Delaras. Yeah, I like those.
DEL.
They set up nice. DELARA. They set up nice, and I found when I switched from my previous tooth brand to those, there's just a decrease in adjustments and an increase in the patients going, oh, finally I got teeth I can chew with again.
Every
Like,
time.
I've got that sharp teeth feeling kind of back.
Because when I look at smile makeovers, I've in my life I've met more people that were just overwhelmed, just in love with their teeth all over again from a smile maker because they were poor, had horrible teeth, maybe they had drugs, substance abuse, meth, whatever, and they pulled them all and got full dentures, and they look beautiful.
Yeah,
right.
And every time someone talks about a smile makeover in dentistry, it's always veneers on someone that's already pretty and already had pretty good teeth, and maybe they needed Invisalign and some bleaching, and it didn't move the needle on her beauty. You don't look at her before and after and think, ah,
Right.
But on the denture ones, man, when they're poor and they get their new
So
teeth and their hair done and whatever, oh my God, they're just in love.
It's amazing. And even if you want, we can include a couple examples that we were just preparing for a Transitional Tuesday to show, a bit of a patient story about, hey, you know what? Your life does get better with dentures for once you hit a certain point. Don't be afraid of the idea of getting dentures. It's a big adjustment for a lot of people, and something that for anyone who's listening that doesn't have a lot of experience with patients going through a full mouth clearance, that once they're going into it, they're very afraid to get their teeth pulled. That's the first thing they're afraid of, and then they start thinking about a denture and
pain's
the
number
pain,
one fear for sure.
and then they start thinking about my grandma's dentures, and they get those types of ideas in their mind because we talk to denture wearing patients all the day. Hey, well, what were your biggest fears going into this? What are you afraid of? Let's talk about those things. And first is pain. Second is my grandma's dentures. I don't want it to look like that. And we get to tell them, we have the confidence now to tell them, well, you know what? You don't have a really high smile. We're going to be able to do something really nice for you. And once we give them that new smile, and I'll give you some examples maybe to put up at the end of the show for other people to see, but they get their new smile in. They come in the next day, they're swollen up still. But I go, how do you feel? They go, well, I'm a little sore still, but last night I was so happy. I was crying last night. I was so happy with how good my smile looks for the first time in 10 years. And, I haven't been able to smile at a family reunion for 10 years. I haven't went on a date in 10 years because my teeth have been decayed and I've just been so afraid of this step. But here I am now, and they look like real teeth to me. And when I smile, you don't see any gum, and I'm so happy, and I wish I would have done this earlier. So it's and just on that note as well, something that you don't think about too much either to let your patients know about is, you might go through a stage of grieving for your teeth. You may grieve your teeth once you've lost them, something that, because again, we see it so often that about 1 in 20 patients, they experience grief from losing their teeth. So it's
very,
to let
very
them know
psychologically intense. It's not unlike losing a limb, where it's like, no, it's gone. There's no way to get back that tooth. You're not going to get back that periodontal ligament and have the sensation of pressure on a tooth ever again. You're not going to feel as you chew through something. You're not going to have a sense of texture when you chew through something that's crispy, like fried chicken. You're going to lose a lot of that. And it's a hard thing to overcome psychologically. And as much as we can prepare the patients for pain and potential infection and denture sores and learning to chew with the dentures, by far the hardest things people encounter when they get a first set of dentures is the psychological aspect. No question.
And that's why I think it's better to gradually go into like when people just say, I'm not going to make a partial, let's pull them all and go full denture. Oh, hell no, man. Just keep hanging on to anything. Let them gradually go. Yep. And then to go from a partial to implants is a disaster. I always say, no, go from a partial to a denture. Let them have that be their new norm. And then the implant takes them up. But to go from teeth to an all-on-4 or something like that, it's like I'd rather take you from rock bottom halfway up a mountain.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's such a good point.
Yeah.
As a dentist, we were trained in our day that you make a denture and they need Fix-A-Dent or some denture adhesive. You're a failure if you made this right. That adhesives are a sign the denture doesn't fit, it's ill-fitting, whatever. Do you buy into that, or do you think that some people there's a place for it? Or
you know what? We were always taught in school, same thing. A well-fitting denture doesn't need adhesive, but if somebody's not going to have the anatomy to achieve good retention, especially on the lower denture, upper denture, different situation, you can usually get some great suction up there. It stays in like a rock, and you'll hear it from every patient. These dentures feel pretty good. I'm actually doing all right. The bottom one, though, that's the part that kind of sucks. I always would have felt so ashamed if a patient came in with dentures that were 3 months old and they had adhesive in it. I'd be like, oh, I messed up. That denture doesn't fit. Obviously, they're having problems. But then, oddly enough, I joined a denture support group on Facebook because I just wanted to get more insight into the patients. And everybody's using the adhesive. A lot of people treat it in their minds like an alternative to implants almost. They're like, well, this is what I use to gain security and gain retention with my denture. And we don't have to think of it as making up for an ill-fitting denture nearly as it is that person just wants to use it to gain retention, gain confidence. You know, you'll have a lot of patients that say, oh, I never use my denture adhesive. I don't really need it. I just like to use it if I'm going to be going out for dinner and I'm going to be sharing laughs with friends, and I don't want that insecurity that I might let out a big belt and my denture goes flopping out. That's my opinion on adhesive. Yeah. I found there's so many people using it and enjoying using it. Why?
You know what I would do on that Facebook group is I think regions start drinking their own Kool-Aid. Like for instance, like when I went to Australia, you know, in America they always do 2 implants on the bottom and have the denture snap in.
Yep.
But in Australia they do 1 up the midline.
Yes. Yeah.
And the way and it's like so I would love to learn from people who are making dentures in Asia and Africa and Europe. It's just amazing. We all have the same disease, but I thought that was so neat how everybody does it differently.
Yeah, and I'd like to quickly put a plug in for the Coburn brothers in BC. They're denturists, or one brother's a denturist, the other one is a business partner in a denture milling lab there, and they have a yearly digital denture study club where they do bring in denturists from across the world. Last year they had someone that flew up into northern Quebec to do work on First Nations individuals. They had someone from Australia. They had someone from Germany. So it is a good resource if anyone's listening.
Absolutely. And if you love dentures, if you love it, digital, that's the place
Yeah.
to find yourself. That's like denture mecca for sure.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the current state of attempting denturist practice ownership. Associates paid too little to afford what is believed to be fair pricing. What do you think about that?
Yeah, right now we have an interesting situation going on in Canada that's very different, but maybe there's some sort of correlation that dentists can draw from this. Denturists in Canada, just based on our history of when they first started out, 30, 40 years ago, they're getting older guys now. When they first started out, they're making themselves, which they still are, so they don't necessarily value their time as strongly as someone nowadays might. So they go, well, hey, I could get a technician for $25 an hour, or I could just work a couple extra hours every night. So, but then once they get an associate and they go, well, hey, I could do this job without you maybe, and they don't pay their associates well enough to save up enough, and then that associate, they worked there for 10, 15, 20 years. The denturist is looking to retire now, and he's looking to get an appropriate amount for his business, but their associates that they've hired, they haven't been paying them well enough to get a down payment on their business. So right now we're heading into a really weird cycle where we have denture clinics getting listed for sale by the owner, and no one's buying them because anyone that's younger can't afford them. And DSOs, thank God, don't want denture clinics because they're so heavily owner-operated. So it's becoming a very interesting dynamic as denturists, the boomers are turning 65, they're starting to retire. This huge amount of denture clinics coming up for sale starts at $600,000 or whatever they're asking for it. A year later, it's at $200,000. 6 months later, they're asking for equipment sale, and then a month later, it's dental chair for sale. Please come get it. Or
it starts at the private equity numbers of EBITDA 3.5 times this, and then you see they're going for that, piecing it out, and it ends up you see the same guy's name and their phone number on Facebook.
You remember Warren Buffett's right-hand man, Charlie Munger, who just passed away lately, and Charlie Munger always says the minute someone says EBITDA, you switch it with bullshit.
Yes.
I mean, the whole concept of EBITDA is so full of shit. Earnings before interest. I'm sorry, is it interest?
Yeah,
taxes.
Interest, taxes.
I'm sorry.
Depreciation,
amortization. Can you just add labor, supplies, electricity, cookies? I mean, break room. I mean, like earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. Why not throw in labor?
Why not?
Yeah,
I mean, my God,
absolutely,
it is. But and I've seen it. I mean, I went to Creighton in Omaha, and Warren Buffett, the Oracle Omaha's there, and he came over and lectured to our freshman business class. And I to tell you how smart of a guy I was, I thought he was dumber than a rock, because that was back in 1980, and I'm like the Nifty 50. He's going to talk about Polaroid and Kodak, and he's talking about See's Candy and all these. And I asked him, I said, well, you're not even talking about the Nifty 50. And he says, if you can't explain it to me on a 5x7 business card with a number 2 pencil, I don't understand your business. And I thought, oh God, that's why he's not in Wall Street, and that's why he's in Omaha. And what I should have done is dropped out of college, but the $6,000 of tuition with Berkshire Hathaway, and then would become a surfer for 20 years, and then I'd be worth $100 million.
So true.
But I did the traditional way, where I thought at 18 I knew more than him, and oh my God, that was a great turn on. Didn't Canada, they just started a new national dental insurance plan?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely. Thank God they did. Yeah.
Thank God they did.
Thank God they did
it's
for
really
us. Yeah,
cool.
it's been excellent.
Yeah, it's been good. It's been bringing patients in.
So
Ironically, it's
tell
tough
us
for
the history.
patients,
So,
right?
so when they talk about socialized medicine in the 20 richest countries, did it not cover dentistry?
No.
And now it does.
No,
cover
definitely
dentistry?
not. Yeah,
So it
that
didn't
was,
cover dentistry at all, not even for
Yeah,
kids
there
or
was
elderly,
some
or-
there was some provincial programs
Yeah.
that would cover certain things. Like I because we're not dentists, I don't know their economics, but I think that in Alberta there was something like one filling and a cleaning a year for kids under 12 would be covered by the Alberta government, something like that, just to kind of cover the basics. But outside of that, our universal health care in Canada, people think of Canada, free health care, does not cover dentistry, no dentistry coverage. It's
Well, it's not part of the
essentially-
body.
That's
It's part of your car, ain't it?
Yeah, of course.
yeah.
Is it part of the tractor or a car or a train? I
Right.
know it's not part of the body.
And it's been really so the Canadian Dental Care Plan is what they're calling it.
The Canadian Dental Care
yeah,
Plan.
CDCP.
Yeah, CDCP.
Yeah.
And they've introduced
CCDB?
CDCP.
CDCP.
CP.
CDCP.
And they've introduced it, rolling it out starting last year, where they started covering 90 years older plus for their dental needs. As long as you make
90?
Yeah, starting with that for 2 months.
Okay.
And then that covers for, essentially for us at least in Saskatchewan, 90% of their dentures, as long as you make $90,000 a year or less. Now they've slowly, over the last few months, every month or two, they introduce an additional 3 years. Now it's 87, then 80, then 84, then 81, and so on.
And
So
just a couple
kind of
details.
gradually covering
yeah.
more and more
Like,
until
what
it's
do you-
every household under 90,000.
Do you have one fee for a denture, or do you have market segmentation?
and I know you're going to really hate when I say this, Howard, out loud, but we don't right now offer too much market segmentation in our own practice. I know you're going to hate the sound of that, but our other clinic, our other associate, she does offer that, and it's been excellent. But what they offer is they pay for a standard denture. For us, at least, we charge the fee guide that the government tells us to. So
And what is that fee?
right now in Saskatchewan, it ends up being $16.22
Canadian.
Per
Canadian,
unit,
per,
yeah.
per arch, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, $16.22 per arch
For
Canadian.
complete
Yep.
dentures, yeah.
So that's your fee for everybody, or is that your fee just if they have the Canadian?
That'd be our fee for everybody. Like our fee guide amount would be
Yeah.
that from our provincial association.
So then how much? So it's
And then-
how much? 16 what?
I think 1620.
Well, in Alberta, 1624. I know
It's easy to get them out of.
exact
We
one,
we
yeah.
practice in both provinces,
Yeah.
so we got 2 fee guides. that we got to
Okay,
remember. but
and so what percent of your dentures are you? What percent of the time are you making a full set versus one arch?
Ooh.
Right now, again, our demographics changing really quickly. We're finding that we have 30-year-olds coming in for their first single upper, first upper clearance, first partials, and it's been changing so quickly with our demographics, and maybe our
Yeah.
advertising has been really effective. Our Facebook advertising or Google advertising has been drawing in a younger crowd. I'd say before that, I would probably say 40% complete upper, complete lower, completely edentulous, and maybe 40% would be single upper, and then we'd have 20% partial.
A lot of
You hear what he
combination
just said?
cases, a lot
You
of
hear that
combination
Freudian
cases.
slip he just said? He just said, I'm on Facebook, we're getting a lot of younger people.
Yep.
Yeah, grandpa ain't on Facebook. And every time I find the biggest implant dog in town, he's mailing to the old mailbox. If you guys go to your house and you go out front, you'll find an old mailbox out there. And grandma loves to check the mail. You know, all the millennials hate it and throw it away and think it's all junk and cutting down trees. They love to check the mail. It's part of their daily routine. And he has this, all his implant is buy one implant for buy one implant for $900. I think it says $900 or something.
Yeah.
And he always mails his 3 mile radius, and it's been a cash cow forever. And if you look at all the big full mouth rehab cases, they're not going to be 5 or 10. They're going to be 60, 70, 80, 90. and those are direct mail. And I love marketing, and they're still saying that direct mail and email is still, it's still when you're in marketing associations that actually show their data, email and direct mail is still number one and number two. But you'll never convince one dentist under 40. You know, you just they don't believe that. But yeah.
But I'd say too, when we talk about young patients in a denturist practice, young is in large part late 40s, early 50s. That's the Facebook age.
So is that
right?
mostly poverty or substance abuse? I mean, when you need a denture when you're 30, does that have to be meth, or could it just be
when you're
There's
30?
so many reasons. There's so many
It could be
reasons.
pregnancy.
Yeah.
It could be a car accident, motorcycle
It
accident.
can be depression. It
Yeah,
can
it
be
could
a
be mental
a
illness.
6-month
I've seen
stint
more
where,
and
you know,
more
you
mental
I'm
illness
still in a
patients.
state of shock coming to this podcast. You know what I witnessed today, Kyle? I didn't even tell you this. I mean, I was stunned. A truck had a bunch of stuff in the back, and the mattress flew off and hit the motorcycle rider like 2 car lengths behind.
This happened to you on the way here.
Yeah. I saw that. I couldn't believe that mattress just caught the wind. Guys on him just smacked him back. I'm just like, right on I-10. Right on I-10. So yeah, I hope that guy needs a denture, because I think he needs.
Yeah.
I think
That's going to be the
dead.
last step.
Yeah, I think he's dead.
We also
God,
have
I hope
other-
this isn't too sensitive a question. If it's too sensitive, we'll delete it. But
Yeah.
do the Indian populations have any different denture needs or anything?
Lots of denture need from the nearby indigenous reserves at our
More-
clinics.
Do they have
for
more
sure.
dentures than?
Well, I mean, our sample population is only the ones coming to get dentures, so
Yeah.
yeah, I would say yes, but I'm not really sure on the actual statistics.
Yeah.
But on the reserves, there's a lot of intergenerational trauma and lots of sensitive.
Intergenerational trauma.
Yeah,
What
like
does that mean? Domestic
lots
violence.
of lots of, I would say, just things that they experienced during colonization that's now been passed down, and the state on the reserves is definitely a sensitive subject overall, but there's a lot of people there with substance abuse issues, and we see a lot of poverty on the reserves. Like it's insane. If you can't even imagine.
Well,
Can't even
in the
imagine.
United States, so the continental United States, the average male Indian has a 54-year-old life expectancy, and then a non-Indian like me and Kyle is 74.
I believe
It's
that.
20 years shorter life, so that is just so
Yeah, absolutely.
disconcerting.
We also
That's
have
sad.
a population. I'm not sure if you're familiar with what residential schools are.
Residential schools.
So back for a large period of time in the 1900s in Canada, the government essentially took First Nations children away from their parents and put them in schools away from their parents all year round. And a lot of the kids that went through that, you can imagine the dental care they were getting at these schools where they were already, being terrorized for speaking their language. And now, I have a sore spot, and you can imagine what a dentist to a child not already having that good relationship would do to them. So we are seeing a lot of patients that are they're in their 70s that went through that as children and been so traumatized from that experience that they never saw dental care until their 60s again, and they finally opened that door back up again, and now they're getting dentures, or they ended up needing dentures because 30 years ago they stopped going to a dentist, and then now we're seeing them for their second set of dentures and things like that. So the residential schools for a lot of our older patients had a pretty massive play in where they are now, and that's, I think, a lot of just in general denture wearing patients as well. They come from a situation in Canada where we never had dental coverage, and dental insurance plans were expensive. There was no Medicaid, where as kids they never got the proper dental care. It never became part of their routine to go every year for cleanings, and their family just could not afford it. You carry those habits into adulthood, and then here we are now with a denture. So there's a
we
lot
live
of
in
reasons,
a largely rural blue collar province where a lot of employees that whether they're farm owners or they were just subcontracted blue collar employee didn't have dental benefits their whole life, and now they're 50. If they did spend money on the dentist, it's on their kids, and now the time has come to pay the piper, and they got a mouth with either perio disease or lots of caries. Typically a smoking patient too, and they just put off the dental care for that long, and now the options are $50,000 full mouth rehab, or pull them and get dentures. And that's what my parents have, that's what my aunts and uncles have, everyone around me has got dentures. I don't see too much wrong with that, and I'm not scared of that because they all have it, and that's a big piece of the population for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What was the big movie about Indians? Killers of the Flower Moon.
Oh yeah.
And what's amazing is gosh, so many Americans don't even know their history. I mean, this country was in Canada and Australia.
Yeah.
Was built on America was built on a huge two mortal sins. They came here, they killed off the indigenous people, and then they brought their African slaves, and the first thing they built was a church.
Right.
It's like, can it be more insane? And just trying to get, my 70, 80-year-old uncles to just agree with that fact. And what would you say that Flowers of the, what do you call it? Flowers of the Killer Moon. Did you see the movie? Oh, I thought it was just, I couldn't believe it. I was watching that. I mean, it's just,
what's like the premise? I've not seen it.
Yeah.
It's what, the premise is that they discovered oil. So all these nice guys came in to be nice to them and started marrying the women. And then as soon as they married the women, she always died of some disease. And before long, they had complete European ownership of all these oil fields.
Wow.
Oh,
And these detectives would come in and they'd say, okay, so how come every time a guy that looks like you two marries an Indian, their life expectancy is like 2-3 years? And I mean, and then they'd kill the investigators. I mean, it was just crazy. And it's like, God, you think the first way to get your hands around this, let's just admit all these tragedies happen and make movies out of it and all that kind of stuff. It's just
it's so true. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Getting exposed to what the realities were.
So
is
you
important.
cannot watch a CNBC or a publicly traded CEO on Kramer, without talking AI. Everything's AI. You know what I mean? It's going to help you go to the bathroom and, everything. Is AI come to your neck of the woods?
I'll let Chase speak to that. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's changing all the time. What is AI, right? It's just collecting data and then using that data to produce something for you that it can learn from that data. So as we're using lots of softwares, it's learning what we prefer to do as we're setting teeth, how they need to look in relation to anatomical landmarks. And I think as we go forward, it's going to use all of this collected information to make it so that the process of designing a denture digitally is going to be just fully automated. It'll just need a little bit of human hand finishing. And that's like the future for us right now is how much data can we be collecting to get the best possible return on that data in terms of software that can help us make our jobs easier.
And what is the deal about incline teeth? Because, when you listen to all the occlusal guys, you want these 33-degree incline teeth and all that kind of stuff. But man, when they have 0-degree occlusion, they never complain. And it just seems like older dentists tell me, yeah, you set this up and you're on articulator and blah, blah, blah. And oh my God, she was so miserable. You know what I did with your denture? I just walked her back to the lathe and went, put it back in her mouth. And she said, I was the best dentist ever. What the, and they tell, and my mentors would tell me back when I was, in 87, back when I was in my, I think 24, saying, nah, you don't want any inclines. You want 0-degree teeth. So where does it look? You guys would know.
Before we get into the technicals of it, there's a confounding variable there, which is that if you miss the bite and you put 0-degree teeth on there, they're probably going to function well. Whereas if you miss the bite and they've got 33-degree teeth, they're not going to want to come together nicely. They're going to jumble around a little, and that movement is what's giving them soreness and giving them issues. So that's a confounding variable on that. Just any theory of occlusion.
Is that the most difficulty in making denture? If you had all the deal, is getting the right bite the most hardest thing, or would you say getting it
not the hardest, but the most technique sensitive? Yeah,
the most technique sensitive, most likely to be wrong.
That's the part that going back to what we talked a little bit before the podcast with, if you're coming out of school or you're someone that's a younger person going, hey, where can I squeeze a bit more out of my practice, or where can I advance myself or differentiate myself and gain that population? We're talking, like we said, 20% of the U.S. population right now over the age of 70 without teeth. And if you're considering dentures as part of your practice, I think a great place to start is talking to a denturist, talking to a dentist that's been doing it a long time, getting in there with them, because I can't speak to fillings, but when it comes to making dentures, every bite's different. Every situation is so different. You have someone who has had a combination case, their lower anterior's left, complete upper, partial lower free end, and, they've worn that upper for 25 or 30 years. Their lower jaw has slid so far forward as they've worn through those dentures that now that looks like their bite. But in reality, you go straight from the start. You don't just wash the upper and take a new bite and away you go. Once you put a new denture in there and you take it properly, their bite will go backwards again, back to that original chewing position. There's going to be some people who definitely disagree with that, and they say, no, that's where they're comfortable now. That's where you leave them. And that's fine if that's what you want to do.
Those are the 0 degree teeth.
That's where you put the 0 degree teeth on, and away you go, and forget about it.
Dental Town was launched in 1999. It's 25 years old, and we've never had 2 dentists agree on anything yet.
Yeah.
I mean, oh my God, it's so cute the way oh my God, they'll argue about the 10th degree. I love their mental curiosity. But how is AI? Is it through ChatGPT? Is it open? How is the artificial intelligence?
Like right now, the software we use is AI driven, and it's made by a company called Dentica, and they've got a few different private labels ones out there. You can get it through different names, and it's AI driven, and so you mark the anatomical landmarks, and it's going to come up with kind of a pre-setup, and it seems that as we keep using it, the preset setups keep on getting more and more close to what we want as our final setup. It's a fantastic software. It works pretty well.
And what we do when we get to kind of create an image, I'm not sure if you've seen how this works at all, but what happens is we get 2 digital models, a lower and an upper, in our digital articulation, and then you select points on the arch. So let's say incisive papilla, retromolar pad, top, middle. You're making your landmarks. You're dotting them, and then the AI brings the teeth in to those positions based on what you've given it for the landmark positions. So I'd say, part of our AI.
I think another one is going to be, predicting things that we can't get with intraoral scanners right now, and getting to a point where, like, right now, if you take an impression with an intraoral scanner of an edentulous patient and you've got that in there, it's pulling their cheeks to the side, it's pulling their lips to the side, nothing's quite accurate. But I think with enough time of people using those intraoral scans and feeding that into an AI engine and then feeding in a bunch of final impressions to an AI engine and having it compare them, it'll eventually be able to predict what those borders should look like based on your intraoral scan. So even though you're not getting a final border molded impression, it might be able to predict what that border molded impression will look like because it's got a bank of thousands and thousands of models that some of them are intraoral scanned, some of them are from actual proper final impressions. It'll compare them and tell you what, or predict based on an existing intraoral scan what that border molded impression would look like.
You guys are young, and usually when you're as young as you guys, in America, well, let me just say it like this: every American I know, they love their Medicare.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my mom, I don't care if you're the rich person, they love their Medicare. Well, that's socialized medicine, right?
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
They love their Social Security. Well, the name's right in it. It's socialized retirement planning.
Mm-hmm.
Medicaid is for the poor, and I think the most insane thing Obamacare did is the people didn't, the people said, I hate Obamacare, and I said, well, aren't you on Access? Oh yeah, I love Access. That's Medicaid. The branding of it was horrible. Everybody called it Obamacare, but then they go to get the deal. It was like Access, or every state had it. Medicaid had a different name, and I just can't figure out why. Because Americans pay almost $7,000 a year more than any other country for health care. Mm. And yet our outcomes are like 30, 32, 30. In fact, the last 3 years, life expectancy in the United States has gone down 3 years in a row. 3 years in a row, they're living short. The pandemic was a big part of that and all things like that. But why do you, living up there in Canada, and you guys said you love the Canadian dental care?
I love it. Absolutely.
He loves it.
Yeah, I love it.
Okay, well, everybody your age that just got out of dental school is watching you like, socialized medicine. Oh. They probably just canceled the podcast and went to the next one. I mean, why? What is your perception of what is the deal with Americans' hatred of socialized medicine?
I don't understand it. It's definitely something that we've struggled to understand, the perspective of, just in general, Americans talking to us about, well, how's your 20-hour wait in the emergency room? right now we do have a problem with our emergency rooms. That's very true. But when it comes to this DCHP or CDCP plan, we're seeing people who have had the same set of dentures for 35 years. They're coming in because finally they've never been able to save up the $3,480 it is to get a set of dentures, and they're coming in now and going, I've been trying to get here. I've been trying my hardest to get here. I've never been able to afford that amount. And they're not interested in a visa plan. They're not interested in anything else or financing. And I can't see why someone would ever look at that person in the eyes and go, but I think that you should have done this yourself. Because to say that it's easy for people to save up that amount of money, there's a very small percentage of Canadians in reality that are over the age of 60 who have more than $2,000 in their bank account right now. It's a much smaller amount than people like to think there are. And people like ourselves, we come from a position of having at least something in our accounts, having a job, having functionality. So to think that, you're telling people you should just deal with it yourself, I don't know. I don't think it focuses on how reality is for those people.
So basically, you're communist, is what you're saying.
You're goddamn right.
Yeah. And it's so much. You learn as you get older. So much decision making is emotional.
Absolutely.
And dentists, it's amazing. They're so emotional about money too. I mean, just finding. I remember in practice management consulting. They every time whatever they told you they were doing when you got there, it was never the case. I thought you said you had $1 million practice. And your overhead was 60%. You collected only $780, and your overhead's 82%. Just. I mean, and the guys that say they have 50% overhead, they don't talk about, you paid off your land, you paid off your building.
Yes.
That's opportunity cost. If you didn't have your money in that land and building, you had it in an index fund this whole time. So when he says he has free rent, well, no one in standard accounting would say that the free building and the free land is free rent.
No.
But anyway, and they really listen big when the purchase is going to get high. Mm-hmm. So when you were talking about that milling machine, like how much money are you talking about for that DePrag 5-axis mill?
I can bring up our invoice if you.
Yeah. I mean, we paid. We got a sweet deal because it was a demo deal. The comparable mill on the market would be the PM7, which when you're talking about mills, you've got dry and wet. You have different powers of spindles. You've got 4-axis, 5-axis, or 5+1. I don't even know where the 6th axis comes from, but somehow it's got 6 axes. And we paid all in, including our CAM software, which is a big cost that people don't think of, and our compressor and the dust collector. Again, these are costs that when your dental rep tells you, the mill's going to be $70,000 or $80,000, they don't tell you that once you sign on the dotted line for your $80,000 mill, it's going to be a very expensive decoration unless you also go buy their $10,000 compressor and their $5,000 suction unit. And that's a super common story, but we're all in on this mill with an 8-disc loader, 1.8 kilowatt spindle, which
shipping
might not mean much to you if you're not involved in the CAD/CAM world at all, but we're all in 30,000 Canadian, and comparable would be a PM7 in terms of spindle power. We're quite a bit more powerful than that. You'd be 120,000 Canadian by the time you get your software and your accessories. And that's before you've even bought a disc to go in it.
And what about radiographs? Do you think they all need a CBCT, a Pano? What's your radiograph?
We don't do any imaging in our clinics. We're not allowed to do imaging as denturists. We're allowed to prescribe it to be done. We're allowed to interpret it, but we're not allowed to press the button that says go. I think CBCT is huge.
So they would do that at their dentist office.
Exactly,
and then they come to you, the x-rays and the surgery. Well,
that's
are you
all
allowed
been
to
decided upon and done.
Prep receipts on the teeth?
No, we got to send back to the dentist to get that.
Oh, Henry, so you got to sit there with a mallet and a chisel?
Don't tempt me.
Yeah.
But
no, we'll
it doesn't make any
refer them
sense
back.
because you take an impression, you send it to the lab, and they pour up the stone, they make the entire crown, all by non-dentist, and then the UPS man delivers it. Your assistant unwraps it, but now it's in the dental office.
Right
now, for the first time ever. During the whole process, a non-dentist is going to touch it, and I just told my assistant. He used to tell me, "Well, we're not allowed to adjust the crown." I said, "Fine, then go get a lawyer, and we're going to sue Glidewell because they made the entire crown, and it wasn't a dentist. So that guy's doing something illegal." I said, I just want you to do the same thing the guy at the lab's doing.
Yeah.
You know, and but anyway, it's just, you know, when something doesn't make, and also every one of my surgery friends that do bypasses, coronary artery bypass grafts, that I can't tell you. I mean, I said, well, do you ever have your assistant close? Yeah. I mean, I've been in there for 3.5 hours. I need a cookie. I need to pee. I need to, you know, I need to do something.
Yeah.
But I mean, you wouldn't believe the expanded functions in surgery when people are out, put out, filleted open, you know, yeah.
Going back a little bit to talking about the CBCT and things like that, and technology and things getting advanced, which might perk some listeners as well, is a company that Chase works with pretty closely, Shining 3D. They offer affordable face scanners, affordable intraoral scanners, and desktop scanners. They also have created a 3D printing system to go along with that Chase can speak to a lot. But one of the things I'll mention and pass it off to him if he wants to elaborate a bit more is now they have the technology to take a CBCT, a 3D scan, and then an intraoral scan that we would take, and then we would face scan them. And what that does is, you can imagine if you had a 3D version of yourself on your computer, and you took your mouse and you scrolled in on your face, and eventually you're smiling, and eventually you go from your face into your mouth. Now you're looking intraorally, and then you keep zooming in, and now you're into their bone. So they're creating now what's called a digital avatar, where it's a extraoral or face scan, intraoral scan, CBCT, so you can start doing implant scanning, implant planning, and everything else from a complete face to bone avatar of someone. So that's probably
for sure. I think CBCT is huge for that. Absolutely, for surgical planning. So you can be fully prosthetically driven for the whole thing. You've got a face scan of them smiling, and either models or an intraoral scan, and all of that can get aligned with this CBCT, and they can actually kind of, I don't know if retrofit is the right word, but plan all the way from the prosthetic back, so you can be aesthetically driven, and then go from the prosthetic down and plan the surgery around that, which I think is phenomenal. That's massive with the imaging, and just imaging in general. It's come a long ways, and face scanning's been awesome. We've been doing a lot more of that lately.
Okay, but she just graduated from dental school 2 years ago.
Okay, no face scanners, no CBCT.
She made 3 dentures in her life.
Yeah.
How would you coach her? How would she even learn it? I mean, how would you coach the learning process? Is there a book, a tape?
You can email us.
You know,
what would you recommend?
Like you said earlier about around the world, there's different ways to do things, and a lot of the best stuff originates from a guy named Hiro Abe in Japan. He's got a system called SEMCD or SEMCD, which is Suction Effective Mandibular Complete Dentures. And it's kind of an offshoot of the BPS system, which is Ivoclar's kind of standardized. Here's the best practices for making a denture. If you're a dental student coming straight out and you want to get good at doing dentures and learn about the best clinical practices for dentures, BPS. Go take a BPS course. You can take it from Ivoclar Institute. You can take it from private instructors.
You know, we've made 640 courses on Dental Town, 640, and I mean they viewed amazing, especially when the pandemic came out. Where I mean, people realize they can, you know, take online, and I love watching movies from home more than the movie theater anyway. I mean,
yeah.
You know, you got to go to the bathroom or someone calls or whatever. And some movies are so damn boring after like 40 minutes, I can't take it anymore. But then maybe 3 days later, you'll go watch another 20. Some of these movies, I've had to break them up into like 3 or 4 segments. But I think this, I know there needs to be a lot more CE in dentures because I know how much they hate them. And dentists always love stuff that they're good at. You always hate stuff that you're not good at. If you hate it, don't say you hate it. You just say you're not good at it. I mean, if you're good at something, you always seem to love it. Yeah. And that's why life is an attitude, which determines your altitude and your aptitude. It's everything. I mean, if you go in there and say, I hate my job, it's like they'll go out, they'll get a job, like DSOs.
Right.
Or they'll come out and it's like, well, when I got to school, you couldn't even get a job at a DSO because there weren't any. You had to join the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, or be in the club where your dad or uncle was a dentist. So if you were the first generation dentist and you didn't want to join the military, there's public health, but you know, I think the great thing about the DSOs is, you know, you got a job. You coming out of school, you got a job, and you got a you got a job. I mean, I think it's a really good thing. And these people that work there, you know, there's a thread on dental town, say no to DSOs. But he's talking about selling your practice to a DSO. But, you know, when I come out of school, there was a Ed Silker, and he owned the first DSO that I knew about here. It was called Sunshine Dental. He had 4 locations, north, south, east, and west. And I told him that, you know, I'm building my own office. I'm going to quit in 4 months, so I don't think he'd hire me. He said, I don't care. I said, yeah, but what about when I open up? I'll be. He said, look, I don't think in fear and scarcity.
Yep.
But what I loved about it, he's open 7 to 7, 7 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
So while my office was being built for 4 months, I got a job 7 to 7, 7 days a week. My requirements at dental school were like 50 extractions, like 15 crowns, I think 15 units of denture. I was doing my requirements every week. And I know, and I'm so grateful for that. And had other dentists in there like Nick Goodwani, where I'd pull out the top half of the tooth and he'd have to come in and dig out the bottom half of it for me. But after he showed me 10 times, you know, I learned it. And my God, you're working for a DSO. They own 1,000 offices, like something like Heartland or whatever. And it's like, really, you didn't learn anything from that in the business? I mean, so you're telling me Rick Workman owns 1,000 offices, you work for him a year, and you didn't learn nothing about business, marketing? I mean, it's just all an attitude. And so learn your own body language. When you find yourself saying you hate dentures, well,
Huge.
switch out hate with I suck at dentures. And there was it's amazing. You know, I know some people that out in this town that suck at dentures. Well, there's some big denture labs out here. Have you been and seen them? Have you been to Denture World?
I would love to go.
That sounds like our
my
place.
Yeah. I mean, there's some big denture places out here, like Denture World.
Yep.
And I know a good friend of mine, and he went out and got a part-time job there on Saturdays, and he said that he only worked Saturdays for a year. He made money. He was young. He was school. He made a lot of money, but he really got good at dentures because he worked there every Saturday when his office was closed, and Saturday they were busy. And some other kid came out. There was 2 dental schools in the backyard, and one of the kids came out here and said that during the pandemic, you know, she didn't get to do a pulpotomy, and she feels that, you know, she got ripped off and blah, 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 blah. And I said, well, it's funny, you know, these Medicaid practices, that's all they do, you know. Why don't you go get a part-time job at a Medicaid clinic? You'll probably do, you know, 10 a day, and do it on weekends or evenings. And so she finally, you know, I don't want to work at Medicaid. Well, you paid this dental school $100,000 a year, and they didn't do one. And now this guy's going to pay you on a day rate, and now you got attitude.
Yep.
I mean, it's always the attitude.
Yep.
And I know people that went and worked for a DSO. You know, there's 2 types of DSO, and one is the office manager is running one location. And, you know, that's what they, when I grew up, that's what they did at McDonald's and now Chick-fil-A. They only gave you one, and they wouldn't give it to you unless you had a stay-home wife with kids, because they knew you had skin in the game, you know what I mean? And if you had to pay for the stay-home wife and those kids all out of one office, you're going to work it.
Yep.
Then Subway and Burger King come along and say, I don't care if you want to buy 12 Burger Kings, we'll sell you 12. Well, you're not going to manage 12. You can't.
Right.
And that's why every time you eat a Burger King, you know, when you get the french fries, deep down inside there's either like a tater tot or half an onion ring. You know, there's nothing quality control about Burger King or Subway. And some of these guys are working at HMOs or DSOs where their office managers run 6 locations. Yep. Well, no. I mean, but the thing is, what I always tell them, I said, why don't you get a job at a DSO? Why don't you get their best manager who's run? So she's running one office at $4 million a year, and you want to do a startup? And that's the other thing I learned about practice management. When I started my office, I had this office manager, and when I opened up, I was extremely age sensitive when I hired. I mean, I figured I'm 24, I don't know nothing. All these young hygienists was hired. I hired the oldest hygienist that applied. She's like 55 or 60. I said, I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm not going to hire some 22-year-old hygienist. I need someone who's been there. And her name was Sherry, and she goes, "It's good on you." She goes, "You're humble." She goes, I'll teach you how to do this right. I've worked in 10 offices, and I know people that worked at a DSO. But anyway, when my practice started to plateau, and I realized that my office manager, that's, you know, where she was 20 years before me. So then I found an office manager of something that was doing $2 million a year, and it's like she drugged me to $2 million in like 90 days. And then I sat on that for a couple of times, and I thought, you know, I'd like to get to 3. Then I found some lady that worked in an office at 3.7, and she drugged me to 3.7. So, we get in these deals that dentures suck, they never fit. Well, that's a bad attitude. But
It's
you
a world
got to go to
attitude, yeah.
Denture World.
And I think
dentures
yeah.
fit in huge to a dental clinic, I think, in terms of production. Like you're saying, with numbers and production, if you're a dental student coming out and you want to be able to produce, I think getting proficient with dentures is massive. And you're so right. You can't get good at something unless you've done it a whole bunch of times over and over. There's like a well-known story. I can't remember where we read it, but a not university, but a class, they're learning to make pottery, and they split the class into two groups. One class, here you get 12 weeks, and I want you to make the perfect clay pot by the end of this semester. And the other half, I want you to make 50 clay pots. It doesn't matter how good they are. They just have to meet a handful of small specifications. And then at the end of this 12-week class, now we're going to all do the same exam and see how people perform. And the people who did the 50 crappy ones outperformed the people who did the one perfect one. And, I think you're so right. Get into a practice that's doing a lot of dentures and get good at making dentures through experience and through trial and error. Doesn't hurt to remake a few. That's not a big deal. The patient's going to be happy that you just told them, hey, I'm going to remake this for you because something went wrong along the way.
Yep.
And we're going to figure out what it is and get you straightened out. You can't learn without, a really strong mentor and the wisdom to just listen to everything they say and take it in, or make those mistakes yourself. And most of the time it's a combination of both. But I think for a ton of people, just making those mistakes and learning as they go is massive.
And if the patient's coming back for adjustments, a lot of adjustments, do yourself a favor, be humble in that decision and go, is this bite off? And if it's off, swallow the lab bill, get them to remake it, just do it, save yourself the chair time, save yourself the stress. The patient will be happier. They'll thank you. They won't think that, oh, wow, this guy didn't do the job right the first time. A bite will be missed once in a while, and save yourself the headache. Get out there, learn good dentures. And I would also say get out there and don't learn dentures for one person ideally either, because just like dentistry, apparently, everybody does it differently. But in dentures, it's very strongly differently of, you have to do these facial movements. You have to do this tongue out, this material, that style, this video, open them, don't open them, back to the 3 mil. Get some experience. It's hugely personal.
Yeah.
And luckily enough, as brothers, we kind of get to go, hey, well, I made a denture for Johnny there, and he just hates it. And when you're taking a look, and then you go, oh, well, I don't know, we should change this up, and let's try this out, and give them the proper denture, and they leave so happy. They say, I haven't chewed this and this and this in 30 years. It's the best feeling in the world to troubleshoot. So don't be afraid to remake them. Don't be afraid to learn from different people and see for yourself what you think would work the best. So,
well, I bet you guys are making your dad proud.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So was he the first person in dentistry in his family?
He was the first person in his family to have graduated from any sort of post-secondary school.
Graduate high school.
To actually graduate high school, I think. Yeah.
Graduate high school.
Yeah.
And how many kids did he have?
He had us two, and we have a sister named Grace. She's back at home, and she'll probably be listening to this because we'll be talking about this podcast.
Is she going to be a denturist?
No, she was our dad's front-end receptionist for 2 or 3 years, and you know how it goes. The front end always gets the worst, the bark. And so she went, if I have to deal with that for the rest of my life, I can't do it. And he's like, no, they're so nice when they come back and see me. She's like, nope, she couldn't do it. But so she right now is married or getting married, and very happy. She just had her first nephew. So it's been
hard.
She's not going to be a denturist.
Fantastic.
No, we've tried, and he's tried, but
cut her off and disowned her.
No, she could be half denturist. Yeah.
I'm surprised she hasn't done that to us here in denture talk. It's too much teeth talk at dinner.
You probably can't give this advice because your dad's going to listen to this podcast.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Well, what a lot of people, they went all through dental school. They she wants to work with her mom. Her mom's a dentist. That's her idol. And or her dad's a dentist, or whatever it is. But when you get in there, you're always the kid. And what advice would you give to working with a boss who's your dad?
Yeah.
Does it end at 5 o'clock? I mean, when you go home, is he saying, "Oh, nice bite you did there, moron"? I mean, what are you?
We are so amazingly lucky to have the dad that we have.
Yeah, he's incredibly supportive.
The most supportive individual. Yep. We have friends who go, Blake, if only my dad was like your dad. And for someone to say that to me and to say that to him means a lot. because he's an incredible person, incredibly empathetic. He's funny. He's
Insanely hard work.
He's a great guy. So
Kyle, we know definitely their dad's going to see the podcast. So that wasn't a.
There's a 10% chance he gets this far into it.
If he listens to this the whole thing through, it'll be a miracle. But either way,
well, tell me this: where did you two get your good looks from? Your dad or your mom? I mean, you guys look like models.
He looks like my dad, and I look more like my mom. So,
really,
combination, yeah.
Well, and can my homies contact you if they have a question on it?
Yes, absolutely, and we're available at our emails. We can put them in the comments of the podcast notes and things like that. But working with a parent, besides the fact that we got lucky enough, our dad's wasn't a jerk to us, teaching us. He was very open about when we come to him and say, hey, you know what about we solved this problem, or why are you doing it like that? There wasn't well, because I said so. It was, I don't really know. I've been doing it that way for 30 years, and I don't even know why I do it that way. Well, can we figure out why? And then we do it a different way, and that's why, because it messed the whole thing up. So,
yeah, that's right.
As long as they're a good mentor to you and they respect you as at least as an employee, and not just as a son or a daughter, if they can give you that respect, you'll be fine, I think.
Do they have Sonic drive-ins up in Canada?
No, but we've been through a couple of them here, yeah.
Okay, so that's what my dad had.
Yeah.
And so I worked for my dad from like 10 to 20 with my 5 sisters. It was funny. I loved he was my idol. He was everything. And 2 of my sisters are grade, and 3 of them could not work with my dad. And then they come home and like my dad said, hey, they wouldn't talk to him. And he's like, why does she not talk to me? I don't know. I guess you threw away a cherry limeade she made and told her to remake it or something.
Yeah.
But I mean, just any constructive criticism from your dad on 3 of my sisters. But he could say anything to me. And I was thinking, well, there's a big reason for it, and he's my idol. And so kids are complex. But man, thank you so much for coming. It's just been a fun honor to podcast you.
Thank you for having us.
Can you give any contact information on this?
I would say, you know what, Instagram message. Blake Thompson DD or Chase Thompson DD is our Instagram handle.
Blake Thompson DD.
Yep.
And that's Dr. Denturist or.
I don't even know. We were CD for a long time, certified denturist, and now we just have DD, but not with the periods because that'd be Doctor of Divinity. We're just DD with no periods.
Oh. Yeah. So just okay.
Yeah, just plain our names, nothing in there otherwise. Just Chase Thompson.
Or just ask him a question in the comments. But he said go to Instagram.
Absolutely.
What's your Instagram?
Yeah, Blake Thompson DD, and that'd be Chase Thompson DD. Yep. No dots, no dashes, no nothing. And my email is blakethompsondd@gmail.com. Make it easy. Anything can be sent there too. And a question for either of us, anything digital related, scanning related, denture related, impression material related, anything to do with dentures, we are completely obsessed with what we do. And even if it's a question we don't know the answer to,
talk teeth
we would love to do it.
Well, you should write an article or do an online course for us sometime and do that, because I know my homies and they don't like pediatric dentistry and they hate dentures.
And maybe we can change their mind. And thank you so much for having us on the show.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. It was seriously an honor, Howard.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Oh, man, it was awesome.